Hello, Kids Cook Real Food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector. And today we are talking all about connection. We get to dive deep into brain science, how babies, toddlers, and little ones learn, and the importance of true connection for our brains, bodies, and spirits. I'm so honored to host Deborah McNelis. Today, she's the founder of Neuro-Nurturing, and we are going to go deep on how we can nurture our kids' brains. Thanks so much for being here today, Deborah.
Oh, what a pleasure it is. And I love that you mentioned connections. That's what it's all about, right?
It really is. It really is. So we are going to connect and we're going to tell some stories, but first we'll do kind of the official bio so that people know from whom they're hearing today.
Sure.
Deborah McNelis is an author, speaker, and creator of Neuro-Nurturing. As an early brain development specialist and founder of Brain Insights, she's developed the unique Neuro-Nurturing interaction packets and the digital brain basics quick start guide. Nurture the brilliance within children. Oh, I love that. Brilliance. Like all our kids have brilliance within. It's so beautiful.
Right.
She's been seen in publications, radio interviews, webinars worldwide, receives rave reviews for her engaging and insightful presentations and keynotes for communities, schools, organizations, and companies. And Deborah's enthusiasm for making a difference is said to be contagious. Well, I can't wait to jump in with you then, because it's kind of awkward to be someone with as much energy as I have and have the person on the other end be very calm. So let's do this.
All right.
Now, a lot of people work with children for their career. That's not very unique, but where did your fascination with the brain of children begin?
Well, actually, probably about halfway through my career. I started with a bachelor's degree in early childhood education and started by teaching kindergarten. And then I branched out into helping parents understand how they can support their children's education at home and get involved in learning in anything that they're doing throughout the day. And that all was prior to the brain research technology being advanced to help us learn more. So everything I had learned originally in my training was based on theory and behavioral studies. So in that decade of the 90s, they call it the brain decade, when that research started coming out, because as I said, that technology was more advanced. Now we were seeing what was going on in those brains and what was actually happening and what was contributing to optimal development. So when that came out, I just thought, well, everyone needs to know this. So I learned everything I could, and I was enthusiastic about it, and started realizing that even though this information was out, most people still didn't know it yet. So I thought, I got to do something about this. I need to share it and make it, and my goal is to make it common knowledge. So what I tell everyone is my goal is only to reach everyone because we do, right? We need everyone to understand this. Not only parents, not only professionals that are working directly with kids, but we need the general public, and we need the decision makers in communities or states or at national levels to understand this for policies and programs and services. And we need employers to understand so that they're understanding the impact the parents or their employees are having on their kids. And so we just need everyone to understand it.
I love that. My audience, it's not that big. It's just everyone.
Right. That's it. That's it.
Well, and it's so fun that like your journey was from, let's say, the dark ages of the brain, just like you said, you're observing the outside, you're observing the behavior, and it'd be kind of like a mechanic trying to fix a car without opening the hood. In a way, you can't diagnose, you can't fix, you can just observe. And to see, that you sort of went through that learning process, and now you just can't even imagine everyone in the world not being as excited about the brain than you are. Of course, that's fantastic.
Exactly, because it just makes so much more sense. It brings confidence to parents, that this understanding, that's, kind of these ahas. And that's what I see when, I haven't been doing very many in-person presentations with COVID going on, but when I do in-person presentations, you can almost see those aha moments happening for people as they're learning this and gaining this understanding. It's like, that's why my child does that, or that's why this happens, or that's how I could make a difference with my child or the children I work with. It just creates that.
Yeah, it really is exciting. I like to teach how the brain processes, so I teach the lizard brain and the monkey brain. And of course, for those who don't know, the lizard brain is very primitive, very fear-based. And so anytime you're in fear, you're not thinking like a human, you're thinking like a lizard. And one of the moms in one of my programs just today said, I notice I'm definitely in lizard brain when I'm trying to stuff my screaming toddler into a car seat. I said, oh, yes. And of course, the toddler is in lizard brain too. And she used the head explode emoji and said, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. 2 lizard brains. No wonder it's such a disaster.
That's such a good
yes.
example. Yes. Having the understanding makes an incredible difference.
Mm-hmm.
Such a good example.
Because we don't know what they need until we know what's going on, quote, under the hood, so to speak. So let's start right at the very beginning. We all need to learn as parents and as adults, but what about the little babies? Are they born ready to learn what's going on in there?
Oh, yes, yes. They're so ready to learn. I mean, it's just what they naturally do.
Mm-hmm.
They need to explore the world and learn about, what's this? What does this do? Why does this happen? And just explore. That's learning. It's not that we have to teach them. Like years ago, there was the Teach Your Baby to Read program. And, yeah, we don't need to be teaching them. They just naturally are exploring. They're learning about the world, how this works, how that works, what happened, cause and effect. All of that, as well as how relationships work and who they are in these relationships, who they are in general, and how their body works and how their body moves. And we don't have to teach about a baby to start reaching for something, or how to roll over, or how to sit up or crawl or walk. Well, they just naturally do all of that. And all of that is contributing to their brain development as well. The body and the brain are all connected. So there's no separation there. So it's, yeah, you're right. They are just naturally born learners.
Is there an action step for parents of newborns, babies, toddlers we feel like we should do something, but it almost sounds like you're saying, just get out of the way. What do you recommend to parents of little tiny ones?
Everything's a balance, right?
Uh-huh.
Everything's a balance. So one of the main things we need to do with those infants, in fact, I just developed something new. I just released it at the beginning of this month, called The First 60 Days. Mm-hmm. And it gives this information about what parents need to do. It's based on 21 myths or misconceptions about babies that are common. And
give us one. Give us a hot one.
Well, the hot one was the one where I was going to go, is don't be picking that baby up when it cries too much. Don't pick them up too often, because you're going to spoil the baby, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So that one's rampant and too often shared. So it's just the opposite. By responding to the expressed needs of a baby, responding in a nurturing, consistent way, we are going to contribute to the highest functioning area of the brain. So this is the first what to do to comfort that baby. It's co-regulation. They're dysregulated. They don't know how to calm themselves down. They're feeling, say it's hunger. They're feeling a sensation. They just cry. It's not a thought process on the part of the baby. They're not able to do that. Their brain is way too immature for that. So they're not manipulating. They are just responding to that physical sensation they're having. And that's where the crying comes. So we go and we respond, and we're nurturing and provide the need, and that regulates the baby, that we've met that need. Now they have a need for, they're scared or lonely. They need to be picked up and comforted. And so responding to those needs is one of the most critically important thing we can do.
Well, and thank you for that. Yeah, and we started out saying it's all about connection. I think sometimes we put our adult brain paradigms on these little ones, and so I love that you pulled out. They're not manipulating. That's literally impossible at a brain development level. They're unable to understand what's going on with them. They're not thinking about, hey, I'm going to cry now. So that's
exactly.
It's so empowering for parents to understand that. And I know, Deborah, I've heard you say that early brain development is not quite an adequate term. So how do we think about brain development?
Well, yes. So what I realized over the years of talking about early brain development, I realized that sometimes that term comes across as two possible things. One is that it's, oh, that's going to be really scientific. That's going to be a lot of neuroscience. I'm going to avoid listening to that. So in the work that I do, I try to simplify it, put it into layman's terms and understandable and practical. The other thing is sometimes people hear that term, oh, brain development. We just better push as much knowledge into those kids' brains and push those academics as early as possible to get them as smart as they can be. If these early years are so important, we got to push all this. So people think of the brain only about intelligence building or being smart or those kinds of things, instead of it impacting all of who a child is.
And we sort of have an epidemic in our culture of overachievement, of pushing to achieve, and kids kind of hitting burnout. I mean, adults are hitting burnout. So probably starting that overachievement in infancy, not the greatest move we want to make. Thank you again for pointing that out. What do we do instead? Is neuro-nurturing the answer? And unpack that term for us.
Sure. So, as I said, about halfway through my career in this, since creating the company Brain Insights, I realized this, that term was causing difficulty for some people. So I thought, oh, we need a new term. So I was having a wonderful conversation with a colleague and expressing this, and through brainstorming came up with this term, neuro-nurturing. And with the idea that it's going to convey it a bit differently. Yes, we're impacting the neural development of a child, but we're doing it in a nurturing way. And through what I share, it conveys that it is for the whole child. It's not just this becoming intelligent kind of focus.
So with neuro-nurturing, you call it the circle of potential model. So tell us how that works. How can we incorporate neuro-nurturing and bring out the potential in our children?
Okay, so yeah, I've actually kind of changed the name of that. I was calling it the circle of potential, but then it got to be, okay, you got the company Brain Insights, then you have this trademark term, neuro-nurturing, and now the circle of potential. So now I call it the Neuro-Nurturing Model.
Got it.
So to simplify things. So what I realized is at the beginning of all my presentations, I was saying, like I was saying earlier, that I try to simplify it and not make it, convey that it's not, to understand what a child needs. It's not as complicated as you might think it is. I mean, yes, the brain is very complicated and we can get into high levels of neuroscientific terminology and understanding. But to provide what a child needs, what I was always saying is, if we meet the physical and security needs of a child and provide nurturing and play, we're providing what a child needs.
Wait, you mean not 2 houses and 5 cars and jet skis and 5 toy rooms? Are you sure? Are you sure they don't need all the things?
They don't need all of that.
Oh, okay.
So I realized that I was saying that. Of course, I was saying that in all of my presentations. And when I was trying to convey, well, then what is neural nurturing? I thought, well, it's those 4 things. So I created this model. I can hold it up here. So the Neuro-Nurturing Model is based on those 4 things. And I made it in a circular design because they all overlap. If you're meeting the physical needs and you're nurturing and play overlaps with physical, and it all overlaps and intertwines within that child, right? So so I broke it into those 4 different areas. And then within those 4 areas, I came up with 5 components to each of those areas. And I can share what those are if you're interested.
Well, let's, I mean, sure. So let's start with the physical. What are kids' physical needs?
Okay. Nutrition. Do you kind of, yeah, I was gonna
kind of what we do.
Kind of all about that one. Nutrition, hydration, movement, touch, and sleep. All right.
Tell us more about touch, because I think all of those are like no-brainers for parents. I don't know if everyone would be easily on board with touch right away.
Yeah, and sure, yes. And that's kind of what I say, that that you can recognize and feel good about you're providing what children need. If you're providing these things, you're providing what children need. So yeah, but then people don't always put those together with what's going on in the brain. And so that is very helpful. So anyway, as far as touching on touch, well, first of all, an infant requires touch. Research shows that a baby will not thrive if there's an absence of touch. Yeah. So it's critically important, especially in those early months. But yeah, we need that touch. We need hugs. It helps to regulate the brain, keeps the brain from being in that lizard brain. And that touching is critically important. So even giving yourself a hug is helpful. So yeah.
Do you know, Deborah, are there actually brain scans of humans that like getting a hug and showing what parts of the brain are lit up?
There are, yeah. Yeah. All of this is so fascinating, isn't it? You get to see those kinds of things taking place.
It is. It's really just scientific proof of, I think, what our hearts and our guts tell us anyway as parents, and I love that you said everything is very interconnected. I noticed movement on your physical list, which to me connects right to play. So what are your 5 play tenets?
The 5 play areas are laughter, exploration, challenge, music, creativity, and imagination. I have creativity and imagination slashed. So, yeah. So those are actually the highest functioning area. That's in the prefrontal cortex, the highest functioning area of the brain to be creative and using imagination, using abstract thought, all of that. So that's what happens in play, right?
And challenge is really good to hear too, because sometimes we think we're doing good parenting when we protect our kids from everything, but they need some hard things in their lives.
Exactly. They do. They need to challenge themselves. And a baby learning to walk is a good example of that. We allow that child to try it. Yeah, we're going to be there, present, so they don't totally fall and bang their head in an unsafe situation, or climb on the stairs when they're not ready to know how to that they're going to fall backwards. We're going to be there, but we're going to let them do it and try. So it's the same kind of thinking through all stages of play to challenge ourselves, or let children challenge themselves.
That's great. And practically as parents, I mean, I guess what is the truth? Do we need to get down and play with our kids and make sure we're like checking off this list? Or is it more of like providing an environment where they can make up their own play?
Both. It's again, balance. They need that time with you, that interaction with you. It's fun. You are so important to them, and they thrive by knowing you care enough to spend time with them and have that laughter and that playtime together. Do rough and tumble play. That's really good prefrontal cortex activity as well. So doing all that, or board games, or just having fun and creating that laughter, sharing laughter together. All of that is very good. But they also need that opportunity to just be self-directed. There's lots of research that shows self-directed play is so incredibly valuable. And just let them explore and try things out, and again with the challenge, but it can be in a lot of different ways. One of my most read posts is exactly that children just want to naturally skip, run, pound, scream, jump, push, pound, crush, just do all of those kinds of things. And if we just need to provide the opportunity to let them do that, but be there if they need help or if they get frustrated, or invite you in.
And what an important reminder for parents, especially maybe if you're a more calm, more introverted personality, and your tendency is to say, stop, don't fidget, don't talk, don't yell, right? We've got to shift our mindset to say, hey, why don't you go outside and do that?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Give
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, can this
I just have to comment on your don't fidget point that you made, because a lot of times that fidgeting is their way of trying to regulate themselves. They're feeling dysregulated. It takes a lot of attention and focus for a child to try to sit still. So they're going to be more regulated. Maybe, have you ever watched a child sometimes? Maybe they're watching a television program and they're just all over the place, but they're still got their attention on it. And they're moving and they're wiggling. And my granddaughter watches TV upside down a lot of the time, on the couch, so yeah. So
just let them sort of make those choices.
Yeah. That a lot of times the fidgeting is a behavior they need, just to help them regulate themselves.
Okay, so I have no idea what your answer is going to be to this, but I volunteer in my son's first grade classroom once a week, and they have the little like bumpy seats that they can sit on, and they have an exercise ball, and they have all these ways that it's like fidgeting is it's almost encouraged. They're not just allowed, but the environment is such that they almost have to fidget. And what I notice, they're reading words to me. It's just boring sight word stuff. And I like to say, you can sit or you can stand, but I did sort of put the ball in the corner, because I did notice that when the kids would get on the ball, they would bounce around and they're trying to read words, but their eyeballs are all around the room. They can't focus on what I'm, showing them. So, you can kind of tell where I feel about this, but what do you think? Like, are those necessary for all children all the time? Some children, some of the time, none of the children? What are these props?
Nothing is all good for all children all of the time.
Okay.
We'll just start there. One of the things I say often is, all children do not belong on page 15 at the same time. It's just, and maybe they're not even belonging on a page at all. So, it's completely dependent on that child. That some children are going to focus better because they have that opportunity to move. Some children, some of them, it might be too distracting. That's too much going on for their brain. So, it's everything is. And one of my big focuses is that every child is unique.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, and I love that. And that was, I guess that was my gut, was rather than to offer the child the ball when they first walk in as one of their choices, to observe and be child directed, right? If the kid
yep,
can't sit still,
right.
no, maybe I can offer them the ball or just say, do you want to stand up? That's okay with me.
Yeah.
As a third grade teacher, I remember I had one little girl and she's so tiny. She probably just didn't even fit, looking back, in even the third grade size chairs. She liked to
Sure.
stand. I let her
Yeah.
stand at her desk. I didn't care.
Yeah.
But I think a
That's
lot of
good.
teachers would have that structure where they're like, you have to sit in your chair,
Yes, yes. And the eye focus, some kids, that's too much incoming information to process, to be looking and listening at the same
Hmm.
time. So they might have to look at a blank wall or stare out the window to be able to hear what's being said. It's just too much distraction when, so you're so right. You nailed it, that it needs to be focused on what that individual child needs. And that a lot of times the children just naturally gravitate to what it is they need, or naturally do what they need.
Yeah, there's definitely a lesson there for parents. Most of us listening are parenting one or two or maybe 4 or 5 kids, but we don't have a classroom of 25.
Right.
So if we're talking to the child to insist on direct eye contact, gosh, it's so hard because that's polite, right? But I guess we just have to try
In
to
some
figure out if they're
in
really
our
listening.
culture, it's polite. In some cultures, that's not polite.
Good point.
So yeah, so that's another thing. I do some consulting work with childcare centers, and I was just talking with a childcare provider last week and was asking about how when she's doing reading stories to the kids, how does it work? Well, I just pick up a book and I start reading. And I said, so you don't make them sit in a circle or do crisscross applesauce or do it? No, I just start reading. And I said, are some of them still playing with things? She said, yes. I said, do you notice that it might not look like they're paying attention to the story, but if you mention something or ask them a question, do they know what's happening in the story? She said, always, always, they do. Yeah.
The power of story. I'm sure there's a lot of brain science behind narrative.
Right.
We only have hit 2 of the pieces, and one of them is called nurturing, right? It's a neuro-nurturing model, and one of the 4 chunks is nurturing. So
Right.
what does that mean, and how important is this to our kids' brains?
Oh, critically important. It's all about relationships.
Okay.
So you talked about the lizard brain. We need to calm that lizard brain. We need to regulate that lizard brain, and it happens through nurturing relationships. If a child is feeling safe and secure and accepted and all of those positive things, then they can learn. But if they're feeling frightened or uncertain or not sure about their situation, or any of those kinds of feelings, they're down in that lizard brain, and that learning parts of the brain can't function. They can't focus on any of that. They're in that stress response area, fight or flight response area. So nurturing is critically important. So the 5 components to nurturing are responsiveness, which I mentioned earlier with the baby, any kind of responsiveness, presence, being present for the child, knowing there's a psychologist, Dr. Mark Brady, that talks about what he calls the big brain question. And we're always unconsciously asking the big brain question. And all throughout our lives, and what our big brain question is, are you there for me? We need someone that we know will be there for us. And so that's what our kids need, to know you have their back, you'll be there for them. So that presence and responsiveness. Empathy is huge. Respecting children for who they are. Respect them as they are. And recognition, again, recognizing who they are as an individual. We talked about, the individual needs, recognizing who they are, what their needs are, and then you can provide that nurturing in the way that they need.
That's beautiful. And of course, presence would be the opposite of eyes on phone. Right?
Yes,
Fair to
yes,
say.
yes, yes. And then bringing that up, I don't know that you've actually seen the neuro-nurturing packets I've created. I know you're aware of them, but I actually created them in a physical form so that it's not something that is taking parents onto their screens even more so.
Well, because how many times do we pick up our phone to do one thing, right? Check if baseball practice is on, or send so-and-so a text, and 15 minutes later, I haven't done that one thing. I mean, I've done all the other things. It's terrible.
What did I pick up my phone to do in the first place?
Oh, it's terrible. And now I almost remembered all four, but the last one fell out of my brain in the last 15 minutes. Which section did we not get to yet?
Security.
Oh,
and
again, that's different than nurturing.
Well, it all intertwines. Again, that's why it's a circle. So attunement, consistency, routines, choice, and safety. Okay. So choice is a big one. That's really helpful for parents to stop and realize. Whenever we're feeling that we have a lack of choice, or a real or perceived lack of choice, it creates stress and an insecurity. So whenever we can provide choice, it reduces that stress level. So child feels more secure in their settings. And we can build choice in so easily. It doesn't have to be big decisions. It can be, should we read that story again, or should we read a different one? Should we sing that song again, or sing a different one? Do you want to put on your pajamas first or brush your teeth first? They still have to do both of them. It's just, which one would you like to do first? They get some choice. So I like to tell the story about one of my grandsons. We were getting ready to go somewhere. He was about 3 at the time. He was playing with something, had no interest in getting ready to go. You're right. And so I was saying, you need to get your shoes on. You know, deaf ears, wanting to focus on what he was doing. And I thought, I'm going to try this. And I said, would you like to put your left shoe on first or your right shoe on first? He came running. Now he had a choice.
I love that example. And I like that you gave parents what I call toolbox terms, right? We have some things they need to do, and we don't feel like it's not easy to give them choices, and we shouldn't give them all the choices because that's insecure as well. Right. But to give them a choice of what order to do things, I mean, that's just gold. And it's so easy to do once it's like in your consciousness as an option. And I was thinking too, like, oh, we're in the security category. She just said choice, and I wasn't sure how they were related, but that's so true. And I think it will resonate with many parents who can say, you know, especially the events of 2020 and 2021, how often did we feel out of control?
Exactly.
It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel safe.
It was just living in uncertainty. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So super interesting. I think parents are probably having lots and lots of thoughts percolating in their brain. And then, you know, of course, here at Kids Cook Real Food, we love to see the families together in the kitchen. So do you have any examples of families utilizing these neuro-nurturing techniques with like chores, family dinner, cooking?
I do. Oh, yeah. I actually, in my neuro-nurturing packets, they're designed to provide ideas, interaction ideas, or activity ideas for use in everyday life. So of course, everyday life includes nutrition and eating together and cooking and those kinds of things. So I know, like I said, I don't think you've actually seen the packets. They're designed in this format so parents can have them right on hand. They can flip them open, not go on their phone and get distracted, and get an activity idea. And then on the back of each card, it then gives a brain insight in very simple terms as to how that's going to help support brain development. So you get what to do and why to do it on the card. So this one, for example, is from the Fun While I'm One packet. And this one's about different textures in the kitchen. So while you're cooking, providing the opportunity for children to experience different textures and talk about those textures and how, using the language to describe them. Let's see, this one is from the Help Me Thrive While I'm Five packet. And this one is about healthy nutrition. And whenever they're eating healthy foods, then you teach them, and this is probably something you do all the time, this is good for my brain, and talk about, which foods are good for your brain and why they're good for your brain. That's the whys are always so important. This one is about, this one's from the, let's see, Play With Me While I'm Three packet. And this was about doing cooking together and learning words about quantity, half, whole, those kinds of things. And then this one's again about brain food. This one's in the 2-year-old What to Do While I'm Two packet. And again, about brain food. And there's grocery shopping ones and mealtime topics to talk about. Yeah, so yes.
I mean, so one of our goals as parents, right, is really just to do some talking, to narrate what we do, to open a child's world, and to give them a very wide variety of experiences within which they have some choice, some imagination, some flexibility, and yet structure. That's kind of like do it all, but that's hard for parents. That's not very grounded or practical. And so I think what you're showing is that these packets of cards, which if you're just listening to this, they're kind of cards on a ring that you can flip, right, have an activity and then a little lesson, a lesson for parents to build our brains, right, on the back. But I can tell that the activities are very developmentally appropriate for our child's age. So we're not stuck wondering, is this appropriate? Or, oh, I don't have any ideas. I'm out of creativity. It's the end of the day. Right. So you're giving very, very practical applications.
Right. How these originated was when I mentioned that I started my career teaching kindergarten, and I had so many parents asking me, well, what can I do at home to help my child learn? And I would say, well, learning takes place in everything you're doing throughout the day. Just make learning fun and interactive. And like what can I do? And I'd say, it doesn't mean sitting down at the kitchen table and writing an A on a piece of paper, right, but just, while you're doing the laundry, while you're making dinner, while you're grocery shopping, while whatever. And they said, well, like what? So I started putting together ideas to share with the parents of the kids in my classes. And then later, as I said, the brain development information came out, and I put it all together. So these are the activity ideas, and this is how it's supporting their child's brain development.
Oh, it's beautiful. Kindergarten teachers are a special gift, and all of us parents, get trained by asking questions of our kindergarten teachers. It's so true. It's so true. Quickly before we end, Deborah, I know that you have also kind of products in teaching on the balanced brain, and that word balanced caught me, not only because I do appreciate the balance of both and every kid is different, but when you talk about balanced brain, give us a little science geek brain nugget of what that means.
Well, the thing is that the brain doesn't like to be overstimulated, and it doesn't like to be understimulated. So think about, you go for a doctor appointment and you're sitting in the waiting room. Do you just sit there? No, you don't want to be understimulated. So you pick up your phone, or you pick up a magazine or something, you do something. Your brain does not like to be understimulated. So it also doesn't like to be overstimulated. That's dysregulating also. It all causes stress. Both of those cause stress. So we want to keep balance. We want to stay regulated. And so we need to do practices that are going to help us. First of all, I'm so all about prevention. So we want to do what we can to prevent getting dysregulated in the first place. And then if we or kids get dysregulated, then we want to get back to that balance.
So for all of our parents of older kids, because I know that, your packets go kind of infancy to about 6.
Right.
If we have tweens or teens, is it too late for them? Or do the same principles apply?
Same principles apply. Definitely. Yeah. The teen years are another. So birth to 5 is a huge growth spurt time for the brain. But then the teen years is another reorganizing and growth spurt time. So when I first started doing this, most people did not know this piece of information, and this is becoming more common. So it's becoming, just this understanding is becoming a bit more common knowledge that the brain doesn't complete development until about the mid-20s. And when parents have that understanding, so I can't expect my 2-year-old to have these kind of behaviors because their prefrontal cortex that controls their emotions, and that's why we call it out of control behavior, because it's out of their control, right? And if teens are in a calm state, and they can talk through something, they can process, they can plan, they can anticipate consequences. They can do all of that when they're in a calm state. But if there's a lot of emotion or excitement occurring, that's too much for their prefrontal cortex that still is not near 25 years old to control. So having that understanding really helps. And so all of this, really impacts and contributes that we want to keep that balance. So doing all of those practices that are going to try to keep them at a balanced state, first of all, we want to do, and if not, help them get back into a regulated balanced state. In fact, I'm doing my newsletter that I'm putting out this week is all on this topic of trying to stay regulated.
And, it's such a good reminder for us parents of teens that they do still need parenting. They still need nurturing. They still need play. It may look a little different, but by golly, they still need play off of screens as well. My kids, I have a 13 and a 16-year-old, and they'll, especially my 13-year-old, be working so hard on homework. And I'll be like, honey, I think you should go play with your friends.
Yeah.
That's so important, and we need to get our sleep. And it's a little bit countercultural, I think, for the parent to be like, no, I think you need a break. I think you need to go play. Like, stop working so hard, teenager. But
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And then as parents, we need to do it for ourselves so that we can be that balanced person that needs to help co-regulate the child that's dysregulated.
Right. And when our teens are acting like toddlers, there's potentially some very good brain reason, and they still need us. They still need us parents, even though they tell us they don't with their words.
That's right.
Their brains need us. Well, Deborah, I love to leave parents with something really practical. We've dug into sort of the academic and the brain science and all the good growth that our kids can experience. But if you wanted parents to take one practical step today, what would it be?
I would suggest I do a presentation all about focused attention and what's going on in the brain with that. And because at the end of that presentation, I talk about how the way in which we focus attention really matters. And so focusing attention on, it's so easy to because we're all well-intended and we want to do the best for our kids. So a lot of times we focus on what new skills they need, what behaviors they need to develop better, we're focusing on, getting their grades up or whatever it is. But if we switch our attention and focus on the positives and the strengths and the positives of their personality, that recognizing who they are, the brilliance within them, refocusing our attention on that, and then verbalizing it to the child that I am focusing my attention on. Look at how great you are, and look at what you did, and this is and those kinds of things. But the other key point to this is that parents need to do that for themselves. Because what do we do at the end of the day? Oh, I didn't get that done. Oh, I should have handled that differently. I could have done that better. We do that to ourselves all day. Oh, my screen froze. Oh, shoot.
I can still hear you.
You can still hear me. Okay. So what we need to do is do it for ourselves, turn our focus on, well, yeah, but I did do that, and I did do that, and I handled that. You know what? You do a million positive things each day. So put a focus on that.
I like that. Focus on the positive, speak it to the child, and speak it to yourself, and specific, right? Not the good job.
No, not at all.
You did
not
this
at all.
well because.
Yep. And I'm really big on not putting a label on it. No judgment. Like, that was good. That was beautiful. That was, just no judgments, just a statement of, wow, it looks like you tried hard on this, or it looks like you put a lot of energy into this, or are you proud? Turn it around to the child. It looks like you're proud of what you did. Are you feeling proud of yourself? Then what we can do is help them self-evaluate and not become dependent on the opinion and the judgment of others.
So many good tips from infants to teens. Thank you again, Deborah McNelis, for being here.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, good. All right, parents, we will see you back next week for another episode of the Healthy Parenting Connector, where we connect you with experts who have the information you need, like brain science, to raise those healthy, independent adults that you can be proud to send off into the world.